Welcome, everybody. I'm Pam from University Bookstore.
She is.
I've done this for 16 years.
Who knew?
I just want to say that we are so grateful for your patronage. We have been here since 900. We're hoping to be here for a century at least more, and we can only do that if you guys come and support us like you are now. So thank you so much. But on to Brad. Like I said, this is his 16th year doing this, and every year has been such a pleasure and a gift. I cry every year, and my spouse is usually here laughing and crying at the same time, but she couldn't come this year, so I'm sad about that. But
I know. I'll have moments when I pause for Suzanne and be like,
Suzanne, the mantle of laughter.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll have to pick up the weight.
Maybe a big sniff, just to...
There you go. Yeah.
And sniff too. Anyway, Bradley, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Kraft.
Hi, Brad.
Yes, and I'm a bookseller here at the University Bookstore, and this is my 20th year at the University Bookstore. I know, they cannot get rid of me, try as they might. And as often as I've deserved to be got rid of. But anyway, so let me just get started then. We'll get straight in. I've been thinking about names. Our names, I mean, not just the names of things. Thanks, Adam, wherever you are. And I don't mean surnames or the names in the old world sense of a name with a capital N. I can't imagine why anyone still cares if you are, in fact, a direct descendant of Wilda, Princess Royal of Knuckleball Streuseltop, or that your great-great-great-grandpa carried the tent spikes of Confederate Major General Gideon Pillow at the Battle of Little Cat Box. I don't understand why anyone cares about that. The only thing more boring than ancestry, frankly, is someone eager to explain it at a dinner party. No, I'm thinking of names as something altogether more common. I realized the other day that as the parents of my generation pass away, I may well be the last person to call certain grown people of my long acquaintance by the diminutives under which I first met them. It was very much a fact of my time that all the boys, rather lazily named for the apostles, became in my childhood Petey, Jimmy, Johnny, Andy, Taddy, Matty, Tommy, Simon, and Phil. I didn't actually know any Simons or Phils. And be honest, how often have you remembered those apostles, Simon and Philip, outside of Sunday school? Now, as a Brad or a Bradley, I was something of an anomaly. All of my little friends had diminutives. True of some of the girls, too. I know at least one distinguished professor of French and French literature who all call Becky, and who recently informed me on social media that I am the last person on earth not to call her either Rebecca, Professor, or Mom. Could name an equal number of other girls I still think of as Katie, Betty, Kathy, Kimmy. Seems the whole baby boom ended pretty consistently in a Y. Until I was grown, my father affectionately called me Shorty. My mother and protector, who knew me better, always called me by my name and only used Bradley Richard when I was insufferable, which was not infrequently. Some years ago, when my father lay dying, he woke one night while I sat beside him in the dark and called to me by my old nickname. I don't remember what I answered, only that I did, and that as I did, the last light of my childhood guttered and died. And somehow that was, of course, heartbreaking, but it was also fitting and right. My parents' names, Jerry and Stella, despite having other more famous folk associated with either, will never mean anyone other than Dad and Mom to me, particularly when mentioned, as they usually were, for better than 60 years in one breath. Other names are just as clear and more universally recognizable. Cher, Madonna, Groucho, Harpo, Chico, sometimes Zeppo, even less frequently Gummo. Or Tammy, no, not the missing Mark sibling, And I'm not really old enough to feel any particular way about the insipid Debbie Reynolds hit song with that name. You may remember the old hooty owl, hoot hooties to the dove, Tammy, Tammy. Tammy's probably still a virgin. And I don't really remember the hit movie or the 3 sequels with, I think, Sandra Dee. So then definitely a virgin. No, that is not my Tammy. For me, there will only ever be the one. Only Tammy, who comes always first to mind, is now, has been, and will always be Wynette. Rest in peace and power, Ms. Tammy, Virginia, Wynette, Bird, Chapel, Jones, Tomlin, Ritchie. That's my Tammy. In country music, they hand out titles like old Italian aristos looking to marry off their useless nephews and unload their decayed palazzos. Everybody not born yesterday in country music is either a legend or royalty, which is just silly on the face of it. Real royalty hasn't had hair that high in 300 years, and that Charles III never wore anything near so nice as a Mr. Nudie suit. Now, jazz had just the one duke and the one count, and the first earl to come to mind will always be Gardner, but Clue will also be an acceptable answer. Whereas country music must have had at least 3 queens and half again as many mothers. I love them all, them ladies. But Tammy was the one. No one better personified the ache of our Pennsylvania soundtrack when I was a boy. Beyond the song everybody knows about standing by your piece of shit, no account mean as a wet rooster cousin husband. Tammy sang every song a sad or sassy girl could need, from I don't want to play house and your good girl's gonna go bad, to something to brag about, to say nothing of her divorce. And with her sometimes husband and the greatest country singer of all goddamn time, Mr. George Possum Jones, Tammy sang every love song from Golden Rings to We're Gonna Hold On, which they sadly very much did not. I miss the messed up pair of them still. The only other Tammy to come to mind will always have had the 2 names, Tammy Faye. Like all those other double and triple named belles before and since, like Peggy Sue or Norma Jean or that nice little Laura Jean Reese Witherspoon. With her first husband and down low friend of Dorothy, Jim Baker, Tammy Faye was a joke and a scandal, and the very personification once of greedy, golden calf worshipping, evangelical, prosperity gospel, snake oil television vulgarity. And she was dumb as a goat playing checkers, bless her heart. But then Tammy Faye talked on air to a gay man with AIDS and was briefly the personification of kindness and sympathy. Remember that? That was confusing. And then after the fall, it turned out that once Tammy Faye was free from the moral sinkhole of her closeted husband, she actually had a very good heart and a surprisingly wide view. I actually got to be very fond of the messy thing. And when she died, who knew we could shed a tear over her? But we did. And not just Jim J. Bullock, but nearly the whole of us sentimental old things. Tammy Faye. Still missed a little confidence drag pixie for Jeebus. Not so much Jan. Anybody remember Jan? For some of us, that name doesn't conjure the middle sister of the Brady Bunch, but rather the human haystack of pink wigs and mop lashes. Janice Wendell Crouch. Know her? She and her assemblies of god-awful Gulf hustle husband, Paul, ruled the Trinity Broadcast Network. The circus was actually founded by the Bakers, as was Pat Robertson's fife, by the way. And like Robertson, the Crouches kept their boondoggle going years after the Bakers' PTL empire got sold for parts. One may have to have had a trailer park somewhere in one's family line to remember the queen of TBN. Some of us will never entirely shake her. Stuff of nightmares. Jan made Tammy Faye look like Georgia O'Keeffe. Picture Dolly Parton, drawn by a 5-year-old with neon magic markers. Jan was Tammy Faye without good gay friends. Jan was Tammy Faye with considerably less Ruth. Among the things Jan had that Tammy lacked, besides a long if creepy marriage, Jan hilariously had an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters from Oral Roberts University, which is just like having a chocolate souffle from a gas station vending machine. Also, unlike Tammy Faye, Jan was about as bright as a pit bull and far likelier to maul anyone who got too close to the bookkeeping or her wig budget or the actual state of the charity mission she flew to on her private plane. Her husband, Paul, dressed like a casino pimp, talked like a carny, and had all the charisma of a tax attorney. It was really that technicolor tornado of false hair, fake boobs, and crocodile tears, blinding veneers, Jan, who kept the ballyhoo going day after grinding day. It was Jan who was under constant threat from demonic forces and liberal journalists. My land, the woman almost died hundreds of times. She sang, she cried, she begged. She gave weird dolls that looked just like her to mystified African children. I would miss her too if she hadn't been such a poisonous presence in my childhood. I wish I could forget Jan Crouch. So some names kind of get ruined. Sorry, potentially harmless baby Adolf. You have bad parents. Other names, often fictitious like Ahab, Sherlock, Scout, Jem, Dylan, Atticus, aren't so much spoiled as made a bit embarrassing after attaining specific immortality, a bit like calling a new baby born today Beyonce, or naming your dog Rin Tin Tin. Really, who can live up to such a name? That is a terrible idea. Buddy and Sook are two other such for me, not spoiled or even so very famous, but very specifically characters I can't see anywhere but in the story I'm about to read. Well, that's not strictly true. I do have an old friend named Nick who calls me Buddy, like we're in black and white road picture or riding the rails between Hoovervilles. So maybe there's nothing very distinct there. But Sook, there is no other. And rereading that story tonight, I am reminded not just of those names, but of the above referenced novel by Truman Capote's great friend, Harper Lee. It would seem that immortality ain't what it used to be nowadays. Much to the shock and chagrin of the generation who once had a Y at the end of all of our names, my generation, younger readers, it seems, have little need of fictional little white children to explain racism to them anymore, and little or no use for Atticus Finch, fictional or real. I'll let you all catch your breath. I fear the day may come when certain aspects of my favorite American Christmas story will soon enough condemn it to a similar fate. If and when it does, those new readers will not be wrong. Don't be upset. I imagine I'll be gone by then, but maybe not. We'll see. Meanwhile, I'll go on with it. There will be other books. There will be other authors, other stories, as good as these. We needed these. Our children and grandchildren may not. It is a loss I already knew something of, having long since abandoned recommending a dissertation on roast pork by Charles Lamb, or The Merchant of Venice, or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or Pudd'nhead Wilson by Mark Twain. Do I not now think all of these great? I do still, and they are. There are, however, other books, other novels, other essays, other Shakespeare. There will be other readers. Those that know already do. Those who are curious still will find these books without me. My endorsement is not required. And no one need like everything I like or love, who and what I love, neither need you. Another thing about names, not the ruined ones that haunt us or the ones we hate, but rather the names we keep for comfort, for love, our own names and others. There is a numeric value to these as well. I don't mean the mystical bollocks beloved now by the Q cult and the Trumpers. Nope. Just no. I mean, how many now remember this name or that name? My grandmothers, Leela Bell and Minnie May, for example. How many still know those names? Maybe a dozen people. Fewer than that? More? How many will remember Truman Capote in 100 years' time? Who will remember me? It matters not a whit. Not to me, honestly, and certainly not tonight. The only numbers, the only names with which I am at this moment concerned are the ones necessary to me, perhaps to us tonight. Posterity will see to itself. Our only job is not to burn it all down, to love one another, and tonight to read a Christmas memory together again. And when we've finished, if you've stayed, tell me your name again, lest I forget. All right, and now, a slug of something wet. All right. And now, the reason for the evening. Imagine a morning in late November, a coming of winter morning more than 20 years ago. Consider the kitchen of a spreading old house in a country town. A great black stove is its main feature, but there is also a big round table and a fireplace with 2 rocking chairs placed in front of it. Just today, the fireplace commenced its seasonal roar. A woman with shorn white hair is standing at the kitchen window. She is wearing tennis shoes and shapeless gray sweater over a summery calico dress. She is small and sprightly, like a bantam hen, but due to a long youthful illness, her shoulders are pitifully hunched. Her face is remarkable, not unlike Lincoln's, craggy like that, and tinted by sun and wind. But it is delicate too, finely boned, and her eyes are sherry-colored and timid. "Oh my," she exclaims, her breath smoking the windowpane. "It's fruitcake weather." The person to whom she is speaking is myself. I am 7. She is 60-something. We are cousins, very distant ones, and we have lived together, well, as long as I can remember. Other people inhabit the house, relatives. And though they have power over us and frequently make us cry, we are not, on the whole, too much aware of them. We are each other's best friend. She calls me Buddy, in memory of a boy who was formerly her best friend. The other Buddy died in the 1880s when she was still a child. She is still a child. "I knew it before I got out of bed," she says, turning away from the window with a purposeful excitement in her eyes. "The courthouse bell sounded so cold and clear, and there were no birds singing. They've gone to warmer country, yes, indeed. Oh, Buddy, stop stuffing biscuit and fetch our buggy. Help me find my hat. We've 30 cakes to bake." It's always the same. A morning arrives in November, and my friend, as though officially inaugurating the Christmas time of year that exhilarates her imagination and fuels the blaze of her heart, announces, "It's fruitcake weather. Fetch our buggy. Help me find my hat." The hat is found. A straw cartwheel corsaged with velvet roses out of doors has faded. It once belonged to a more fashionable relative. Together, we guide our buggy, a dilapidated baby carriage, out to the garden and into a grove of pecan trees. The buggy is mine. That is, it was bought for me when I was born. It is made of wicker, rather unraveled, and the wheels wobble like a drunkard's legs. But it is a faithful object. Springtimes, we take it to the woods and fill it with flowers, herbs, wild fern for our porch pots. In the summer, we pile it with picnic paraphernalia and sugarcane fishing poles and roll it down to the edge of a creek. It has its winter uses too, as a truck for hauling firewood from the yard to the kitchen, as a warm bed for Queenie, our tough little orange and white rat terrier, who has survived distemper and 2 rattlesnake bites. Queenie is trotting beside it now. 3 hours later, we are back in the kitchen, hulling a heaping buggy load of windfall pecans. Our backs hurt from gathering them. How hard they were to find, the main crop having been shaken off the trees and sold by the orchard's owners, who are not us, among the concealing leaves, the frosted, deceiving grass. Crackle. A cheery crunch, scraps of miniature thunder sound as the shells collapse and the golden mound of sweet, oily, ivory meat mounts in the milk glass bowl. Queenie begs for a taste, and now and again my friend sneaks her a mite, though insisting we deprive ourselves. Oh, we mustn't, buddy. If we start, we won't stop. And there's scarcely enough as it is for 30 cakes. The kitchen is growing dark. Dusk turns the window into a mirror. Our reflections mingle with the rising moon as we work by the fireside in the firelight. At last, when the moon is quite high, we toss the final hull into the fire and, with joined sighs, watch it catch flame. The buggy is empty, the bowl is brimful. We eat our supper. Cold biscuits, bacon, blackberry jam, and discuss tomorrow. Tomorrow, the kind of work I like best begins, buying. Cherries and citron, ginger and vanilla and canned Hawaiian pineapple, rinds and raisins and walnuts and whiskey and oh, so much flour, butter, so many eggs, spices, flavorings. Why, we'll need a pony to pull the buggy home. But before these purchases can be made, there is a question of money. Neither of us has any. Except for skinflint sums, persons in the house occasionally provide. A dime is considered very big money. Or what we earn ourselves from various activities, holding rummage sales, selling buckets of hand-picked blackberries, jars of homemade jam and apple jelly and peach preserves, rounding up flowers for funerals and weddings. Once we won 79th prize, $5, in a national football contest. Not that we know a fool thing about football. It's just that we enter every contest we hear about. At the moment, our hopes are centered on the $50,000 grand prize being offered to name a new brand of coffee. We suggested AM. And after some hesitation, for my friend thought it perhaps sacrilegious, the slogan AM, Amen. To tell the truth, our only really profitable enterprise was the Fun and Freak Museum we conducted in a backyard woodshed 2 summers ago. The Fun was a stereopticon with slide views of Washington and New York, lent to us by a relative who had been to those places. She was furious when she discovered why we'd borrowed it. The Freak was a 3-legged bitty chicken hatched by one of our own hens. Everybody hereabouts wanted to see that bitty. We charged grown-ups a nickel, kids 2 cents, and took in a good $20 before the museum shut down due to the decease of the main attraction. But one way and another, we do each year accumulate Christmas savings, a fruitcake fund. These monies we keep hidden in an ancient bead purse under a loose floorboard, under the floor, under a chamber pot, under my friend's bed. The purse is seldom removed from this safe location, except to make a deposit or, as happens every Saturday, a withdrawal. For on Saturdays, I'm allowed 10 cents to go to the picture show. My friend has never been to a picture show, nor does she intend to. I'd rather hear you tell the story, buddy. That way I can imagine it more. Besides, a person my age shouldn't squander their eyes. When the Lord comes, let me see him clear. In addition to never having seen a movie, she has never eaten in a restaurant, traveled more than 5 miles from home, received or sent a telegram, read anything except the funny papers and the Bible, worn cosmetics, cursed, wished someone harm, told a lie on purpose, let a hungry dog go hungry. Here are a few things she has done, Does do. Killed with a hoe the biggest rattlesnake ever seen in this county. 16 rattles. Dip snuff secretly. Tame hummingbirds, just try it, till they balance on her finger. Tell ghost stories, we both believe in ghosts. So tingling they chill you in July. Talk to herself, take walks in the rain, grow the prettiest japonicas in town, know the recipe for every sort of old-time Indian cure, including magical wart remover. Now, with supper finished, we retire to the room in a faraway part of the house where my friend sleeps in a scrap quilt-covered iron bed painted rose pink, her favorite color. Silently, wallowing in the pleasures of conspiracy, we take the bead purse from its secret place and spill its contents on the scrap quilt. Dollar bills tightly rolled and green as May buds. Somber 50-cent pieces, heavy enough to weight a dead man's eyes. Lovely dimes, the liveliest coin, the one that really jingles. Nickels and quarters worn smooth as creek pebbles. But mostly a hateful heap of bitter-odored pennies. Last summer, others in the house contracted to pay us a penny for every 25 flies we killed. Oh, the carnage of August! The flies that flew to heaven. And yet it was not work in which we took pride. And as we sit counting pennies, it is as though we were back tabulating dead flies. Neither of us has a head for figures. We count slowly, lose track, start again. According to her calculations, we have $12.73. According to mine, exactly $13. I do hope you're wrong, buddy. We can't mess around with 13. The cakes will fall, or put somebody in the cemetery. Why, I wouldn't dream of getting out of bed on a 13th. This is true. She always spends 13ths in bed. So to be on the safe side, we subtract a penny and toss it out the window. Of the ingredients that go into our fruitcakes, whiskey is the most expensive, as well as the hardest to obtain. State law forbids its sale. But everyone knows you can buy a bottle from Mr. Ha Jones. And the next day, having completed our more prosaic shopping, we set out for Mr. Ha's business address, a sinful, to quote public opinion, fish fry and dancing cafe down by the river. We've been there before and on the same errand, but in previous years our dealings have been with Ha's wife, an iodine dark Indian woman with brassy peroxided hair and a dead tired disposition. Actually, we've never laid eyes on her husband, though we've heard he's an Indian too, a giant with razor scars across his cheeks. They call him Ha because he's so gloomy, a man who never laughs. As we approach his cafe, a large log cabin festooned inside and out with chains of garish, gay, naked light bulbs, and standing by the river's muddy edge under the shade of river trees, where moss drifts through the branches like gray mist, our steps slow down. Even Queenie stops prancing and sticks close by. People have been killed in Ha's cafe, cut to pieces, hit on the head. There's a case coming up next month. Naturally, these goings-on happen at night when the colored lights dance, crazy cast patterns and Victrola wails in the night. In the daytime, Ha's is shabby and deserted. I knock on the door. Queenie barks. My friend calls. Mrs. Ha? Ma'am? Anyone to home? Footsteps. The door opens, our hearts overturn. It's Mr. Ha Jones himself, and he is a giant, and he does have scars. He doesn't smile. No, he glowers at us through Satan-tilted eyes and demands to know what you want with Ha. For a moment, we're too paralyzed to tell. Presently, my friend half finds her voice, a whispery voice at best. If you please, Mr. Ha, we'd like a quart of your finest whiskey. His eyes tilt more. Would you believe it? Ha is smiling, laughing too. Which one of you is a drinking man? It's for making fruitcakes, Mr. Ha. Cooking. This sobers him. He frowns. That's no way to waste good whiskey. Nevertheless, he retreats into the shadowy cafe and seconds later appears carrying a bottle of daisy yellow unlabeled liquor. He demonstrates its sparkle in the sunlight and says, $2. We pay him with nickels, dimes, and pennies. Suddenly, as he jangles the coins in his hand like a fistful of dice, his face softens. Tell you what, he proposes, pouring the money back into our bead purse. Just send me one of them fruitcakes instead. Well, my friend exclaims on the way home, there's a lovely man. We'll put an extra cup of raisins in his cake. The black stove, stoked with coal and firewood, glows like a lighted pumpkin. Egg beaters whirl, spoons spin round in bowls of butter and sugar. Vanilla sweetens the air, ginger spices it. Melting, nose-tingling odors saturate the kitchen, suffuse the house, drift out to the world on puffs of chimney smoke. In 4 days, our work is done. 31 cakes, dampened with whiskey, bask on windowsills and shelves. Who are they for? Friends, not necessarily neighbor friends. Indeed, the larger share is intended for persons we've never met or maybe met once. People who've struck our fancy, like President Roosevelt, like the Reverend and Mrs. J.C. Lucy, Baptist missionaries to Borneo who lectured here last winter, or the little knife grinder who comes through town twice a year, or Abner Packer, the driver of the 6 o'clock bus from Mobile, who exchanges waves with us every day as he passes in a dust cloud whoosh. Or the young Wistons, a California couple whose car one afternoon broke down outside the house and who spent a pleasant hour chatting with us on the porch. Young Mr. Whiston snapped our picture, the only one we've ever had taken.
Oh, wow.
It is because my friend is shy with everyone except strangers that these strangers and merest acquaintances seem to us our truest friends. I think yes. Also, the scrapbooks we keep of thank yous on White House stationery, time to time communications from California and Borneo, the knife grinders, penny postcards make us feel connected to eventful worlds beyond the kitchen with its view of a sky that stops. Now, a new December fig branch grates against the window. The kitchen is empty. The cakes are gone. Yesterday we carted the last of them to the post office, where the cost of stamps turned our purse inside out. We're broke. That rather depresses me, but my friend insists on celebrating with 2 inches of whiskey left in Ha-Ha's bottle. Queenie has a spoonful in a bowl of coffee. She likes her coffee chicory flavored and strong. The rest we divide between a pair of jelly glasses. We're both quite awed at the prospect of drinking straight whiskey. The taste of it brings screwed up expressions and sour shudders. But by and by, we begin to sing. The two of us singing different songs simultaneously. I don't know the words to mine, just come on along to the dark turnstile. But I can dance, and that's what I mean to be a tap dancer in the movies. My dancing shadow rollicks on the walls. Our voices rock the chinaware, and we giggle as if unseen hands were tickling us. Queenie rolls on her back, her paws plow the air. Something like a grin stretches her black lips. Inside myself, I feel warm and sparky as those crumbling logs, carefree as the wind in the chimney. My friend waltzes round the stove, the hem of her poor calico skirt pinched between her fingers as though it were a party dress. Show me the way to go home, she sings, her tennis shoes squeaking on the floor. Show me the way to go home. Enter two relatives, very angry, potent with eyes that scold, tongues that scald. Listen to what they have to say, the words tumbling together in a wrathful tune. A child of 7! Whiskey on his breath? Are you out of your mind? Feeding a child of 7 must be loony. Road to ruination. Remember Cousin Kate? Uncle Charlie's brother-in-law? Shame, scandal, humiliation. Kneel, pray, beg the Lord. Queenie sneaks under the stove. My friend gazes at her shoes. Her chin quivers. She lifts her skirt and blows her nose and runs to her room. Long after the town has gone to sleep, and the house is silent except for the chimings of clocks and the sputter of fading fires, she is weeping into a pillow, already as wet as a widow's handkerchief. Don't cry, I say, sitting at the bottom of her bed and shivering despite my flannel nightgown that smells of last winter's cough syrup. Don't cry, I beg, teasing her toes, tickling her feet. You're too old for that. It's because, she hiccups, I am too old. Old and funny. Not funny, fun. More fun than anybody. Listen, if you don't stop crying, you'll be so tired tomorrow we can't go cut a tree. She straightens up. Queenie jumps on the bed, where Queenie is not allowed, to lick her cheeks. I know where we'll find real pretty trees, buddy, and holly too, with berries big as your eyes. It's way off in the woods, further than we've ever been. Papa used to bring us Christmas trees from there, carried them on his shoulder. That's 50 years ago. Well, now I can't wait for morning. Morning. Frozen rime lusters the grass, the sun. Round as an orange as a hot weather moon balances on the horizon, burnishes the silvered winter woods. A wild turkey calls. A renegade hog grunts in the undergrowth. Soon, by the edge of knee-deep, rapid-running water, we have to abandon the buggy. Queenie wades the stream first, paddles across, barking complaints at the swiftness of the current and the pneumonia-making coldness of it. We follow, holding our shoes and equipment, a hatchet and a burlap sack, above our heads. A mile more of chastening thorns, burrs, briars that catch at our clothes, of rusty pine needles brilliant with gaudy fungus and molted feathers. Here, there, a flash, a flutter, an ecstasy of shrillings remind us that not all the birds have flown south. Always the path unwinds, through lemony sun pools and pitch-black vine tunnels. Another creek to cross. A disturbed armada of speckled trout froths the water round us, and frogs the size of plates practice belly flops. Beaver workmen are building a dam. On the further shore, Queenie shakes herself and trembles. My friend shivers too, not with the cold, but enthusiasm. One of her hat's ragged roses sheds a petal as she lifts her head and inhales the pine, heavy air. We're almost there. Can you smell it, buddy? She says, as though we were approaching an ocean. And indeed, it is a kind of ocean. Scented acres of holiday trees, prickly leafed holly, red berries shiny as Chinese bells, black crows swoop upon them, screaming. Having stuffed our burlap sack with enough greenery and crimson to garland a dozen windows, we set about choosing a tree. It should be, muses my friend, twice as tall as a boy, so a boy can't steal the star. The one we pick is twice as tall as me. A brave, handsome brute that survives 30 hatchet strokes before it keels with a creaking, rending cry. Lugging it like a kill, we commence the long trek out. Every few yards, we abandon the struggle, sit down and pant. But we have the strength of triumphant huntsmen. That and the tree's virile, icy perfume revive us and goad us on. Many compliments accompany our sunset return along the red clay road to town. But my friend is sly and non-committal when passers-by praise the treasure perched in our buggy. What a fine tree, and where did it come from? Yonder ways, she says, murmuring vaguely. Once a car stops, and the rich mill owner's lazy wife leans out and whines, "Give you 2 bits cash for that old tray." Ordinarily, my friend is afraid of saying no, but on this occasion, she promptly shakes her head. "We wouldn't take $1." The mill owner's wife persists. "$1 my foot, 50 cents. That's my last offer. Goodness, woman, you can get another one." In answer, my friend gently reflects, "I doubt it. There's never two of anything." Home. Queenie slumps by the fire and sleeps till tomorrow, snoring loud as a human. A trunk in the attic contains a shoebox of ermine tails off the opera cape of a curious lady who once rented a room in the house. Coils of frazzled tinsel gone gold with age, one silver star, a brief rope of dilapidated, undoubtedly dangerous candy-like light bulbs. Excellent decorations as far as they go, which isn't far enough. My friend wants our tree to blaze like a Baptist window, droop with weighty snow of ornaments, but we can't afford the made-in-Japan splendors at the 5 and dime, so we do what we've always done. Sit for days at the kitchen table with scissors and crayons and stacks of colored paper. I make sketches and my friend cuts them out. Lots of cats. Fish, too, because they're easy to draw. Some apples, some watermelons, a few winged angels devised from saved up sheets of Hershey bar tinfoil. We use safety pins to attach these creations to the tree. As a final touch, we sprinkle the branches with shredded cotton picked in August for this purpose. My friend, surveying the effect, clasps her hands together. "Now, honest, buddy, doesn't it look good enough to eat?" Queenie tries to eat an angel. After weaving and ribboning holly wreaths for all the front windows, our next project is the fashioning of family gifts. Tie-dye scarves for the ladies. For the men, a homemade brewed lemon and licorice and aspirin syrup to be taken, quote, "at the first symptom of a cold and after hunting," end quote. But when it comes time for making each other's gift, my friend and I separate to work secretly. I would like to buy her a pearl-handled knife, a radio, a whole pound of chocolate-covered cherries. We tasted some once, and she always swears, "I could live on them, buddy." Lord, yes, I could, and that's not taking his name in vain. Instead, I am building her a kite. She would like to give me a bicycle. She said so on several million occasions. "If only I could, buddy. It's bad enough in life to do without something you want. But confound it, what gets my goat is not being able to give somebody something you want them to have. Only one of these days I will, buddy. Locate you a bike. Don't know how. Steal it, maybe." Instead, I'm fairly certain she is building me a kite, the same as last year and the year before. The year before that, we exchanged slingshots, all of which is fine with me. For me, we are champion kite flyers who study the wind like sailors. My friend, more accomplished than I, can get a kite aloft when there isn't enough breeze to blow clouds. Christmas Eve afternoon, we scrape together a nickel and go to the butcher's to buy Queenie's traditional gift, a good gnawable beef bone. The bone, wrapped in funny paper, is placed high in the tree near the silver star. Queenie knows it's there. She squats at the foot of the tree, staring up in a trance of greed. When bedtime arrives, she refuses to budge. Her excitement is equaled by my own. I kick the covers and turn my pillow as though it were a scorching summer's night. Somewhere a rooster crows falsely, for the sun is still on the other side of the world. Buddy, are you awake? It is my friend calling from her room, which is next to mine, and an instant later she is sitting on my bed holding a candle. Well, I can't sleep a hoot, she declares. My mind's jumping like a jackrabbit. Buddy, do you think Mrs. Roosevelt will serve our cake at dinner? We huddle in the bed, and she squeezes my hand. I love you. Seems like your hand used to be so much smaller. I guess I hate to see you grow up. When you're grown up, will we still be friends? I say always. But I feel so bad, buddy. I wanted so bad to give you a bike. I tried to sell my cameo Papa gave me, buddy. She hesitates as though embarrassed. I made you another kite. Then I confess that I made her one too, and we laugh. The candle burns too short to hold. Out it goes, exposing the starlight. The stars spinning at the window like a visible caroling that slowly, slowly daybreak silences. Possibly we doze. But the beginning of dawn splashes us like cold water. We're up, wide-eyed and wandering while we wait for the others to waken. Quite deliberately, my friend drops a kettle on the kitchen floor. I tap dance in front of closed doors. One by one, the household emerges, looking as though they'd love to kill us both, but it's Christmas and they can't. First, a gorgeous breakfast, just everything you can imagine, from flapjacks and fried squirrel to hominy grits and honey in the comb, which puts everybody in a good humor except my friend and me. Frankly, we're so impatient to get at the presents we can't eat a mouthful. Well, I'm disappointed. Who wouldn't be with socks, a Sunday school shirt, some handkerchiefs, a hand-me-down sweater, and a year's subscription to a religious magazine for children, The Little Shepherd? It makes me boil, it really does. My friend has a better haul, a sack of satsumas. That's her best present. She is proudest, however, of a white wool shawl knitted by her married sister. But she says her favorite gift is the kite I built her. And it is very beautiful, though not as beautiful as the one she made me, which is blue and scattered with golden green good conduct stars. Moreover, my name is painted on it, Buddy. Buddy, the wind is blowing. The wind is blowing. And nothing will do till we've run to a pasture below the house where Queenie has scooted to bury her bone, and where, a winter hence, Queenie will be buried too. There, plunging through the healthy, waist-high grass, we unreel our kites, feel them twitching at the string like skyfish as they swim into the wind. Satisfied, sun-warmed, we sprawl in the grass and peel satsumas and watch our kites cavort. Soon, I forget the socks and the hand-me-down sweater. I'm as happy as if we'd already won the $50,000 grand prize in that coffee naming contest. My, how foolish I am. My friend cries, suddenly alert, like a woman remembering too late she has biscuits in the oven. You know what I've always thought? She asks in a tone of discovery, and not smiling at me, but at a point beyond. I've always thought a body would have to be sick and dying before they saw the Lord. And I imagined that when he came, it would be like looking at the Baptist window. Pretty as colored glass with the sun pouring through, such a shine you don't know it's getting dark. And it's been a comfort to think of that shine, taking away all the spooky feelings. But I'll wager it never happens. I'll wager at the very end, our body realizes the Lord has already shown himself, that things as they are. Her hand circles in a gesture that gathers clouds and kites and grass and Queenie pawing earth over her bone. Just what they've always seen was seeing him. As for me, I could leave the world with today in my eyes. This is our last Christmas together. Life separates us. Those who know best decide that I belong in military school. And so follows a miserable succession of bugle-blowing prisons, grim, reveille-ridden summer camps. I have a new home too, but it doesn't count. Home is where my friend is. And there I never go. And there she remains, puttering around the kitchen, alone with Queenie, then alone. Buddy, dear, she writes in her wild, hard-to-read script. Yesterday, Jim Macy's horse kicked Queenie bad. Be thankful she didn't feel much. I wrapped her in a fine linen sheet and rode her in the buggy down to Simpson's pasture where she can be with all her bones. For a few Novembers, she continues to bake her fruitcakes single-handed. Not as many, but some. And of course, she always sends me the best of the batch. Also, in every letter, she encloses a dime wadded in toilet paper. See a picture show and write me the story. But gradually in her letters, she tends to confuse me with her other friend, the buddy who died in the 1880s. More and more, 13ths are not the only days she stays in bed. A morning arrives in November, a leafless, birdless coming of winter morning, when she cannot rouse herself to exclaim, "Oh my, it's fruitcake weather." And when that happens, I know it. A message saying so merely confirms a piece of news some secret vein had already received, severing from me an irreplaceable part of myself, letting it loose like a kite on a broken string. That is why, walking across a school campus on this particular December morning, I keep searching the sky, as if I expected to see, rather like hearts, a lost pair of kites hurrying towards heaven. Thank you. And now we're all dehydrated. You would think I would be better about that. You would be wrong. That is still not easy. And that's good. All right. Heavens. Man up, boy. All right, now I'm going to read something else of my own. There's a collection of these called Plates, a Christmas concatenation over there on the shelf if you want one. That's as close as I come to a sales pitch. All right, so this one is a specific thing that I need to have a prop for later. All right. All right, so now, my mother's house is dark and quiet. The roof of her house is shaded by the trees my father planted 50 years ago. Even in broad day, unless you are at a window, the room is likely dim. This suits Mum, mostly. She has a sensitivity to light and has learned, it seems, to see in the dark. My brother calls her Owl Lady. She turns on the standing lamp to read her paper and her mail. She also drapes a kerchief over her bosom so as not to get inky from the cheap newsprint. She balances her checkbook and such on the kitchen table in her add-on laundry room, sunniest room in the house. Always smells good, too, like fresh towels and clean sheets. At 91, she doesn't iron everything anymore, but the board's right there if she needs it. The quiet in her house was always there, but we never used to hear it. My folks were never people to run a TV or leave the radio on all day, busy mostly, things to do. He worked, she worked, they raised children. They went, they did, they were doing every day. There were always other people to look after, old people, other people's kids, strangers, friends, animals to be seen to, and places they had to be or meant to go. Once a week, they went out to eat every Friday, usually had fish. Used to order black coffee, then water with lemon, and then that stopped. The quiet settled on the house for good when my father died. Now widowed, my mother must occupy her own time as best she can. She paints a little, she collages. A week or so ago, she put out Christmas, which means that her little house is now decorated to within an inch of inaccessibility. If you should visit, mind how you go, as there will be very few flat surfaces that have not been made abundantly festive. Even without the holiday displays, the house is well packed. I joke with her that there is nowhere to fall the whole way to the floor. Every day now, my mother gets up and makes her breakfast now rather than his. Instead of sorting pills into two little porcelain dishes, she puts her pills into just the one dish the night before. She takes the insulin he gave her for many, many years. She eats her toast, drinks her coffee, and watches the morning's local news. Her choices are Pittsburgh or Youngstown, neither of which is actually all that local, which says something about life in rural America. Even in her 90s and alone, she dresses every day and puts her face on. She is not to be caught out in her pajamas should anyone come to the door, so long as no one comes to the door at some unreasonable hour before noon. And now an assertion I believe I will be allowed as soon as it is made and without more than a little concrete evidence. I know I am biased. Nevertheless, I genuinely believe that my mother is now an entirely admirable person. Which is not to say that she used to be a bank robber or someone who kicked babies. And now I feel I've rather painted myself into a corner, and so I ought to say, no, we neither of us kick babies, dogs, or other people's potted geraniums. And what a dark and dire world in which you must live if anything I've said led you to think we did. But then that's my fault, as I'm the one who very well may have put that idea into your head, and I'm sorry. To restate the obvious, my mother was always a good person and a good mother. I intend only to add that what there is of her now, what is left after illness, loss, survival, resignation, loneliness, love, she now seems to me to be just the essential of what she has always been. My mother has been winnowed, but has neither bent nor broken. Doesn't make her a saint, mind. She still gets irritable, still worries, like old bones, things she ought not to worry at all, still gets blue and still snaps now and again. She can still wither your soul with a surprisingly sharp, not really, in answer to what may have seemed a perfectly innocent question. There are times now, talking to her on the phone, when I can still find myself no longer entirely adult. Happens. Say the wrong thing the wrong way, and I'm 9. She's still Mum. We both try very hard now not to disappoint, though I know I regularly do, as I always have and inevitably will again, though she'd deny it. We usually laugh quite a lot when we talk, but not always in the nicest way or at the most harmless things. We can be a bit catty, the two of us. We giggle when she's not altogether nice, particularly when she's seen some nasty piece of work at the Walmart or spoken to some mean biddy at the market. I love that. A phrase from my grandmother comes to mind: piss and vinegar. And yeah, she's sweet, my mom, but there's still that in the mix as well. For example, we both find it funny that when the irascible, the unpleasant, and the mean, the miserable, the stingy, and the god-awful, genuinely bad people die, and it's never soon enough, is it? And before you can say good riddance, they are instantly beatified by their survivors. Go to any funeral, read any obituary. Doesn't matter that you know better. That wretched woman who used to wallop her kids in the Kmart, dead, best mother ever. Deadbeat dad, dead, a faultless father. That grandmother you remember shouting racist nonsense at the common room TV now sits at the right hand of a loving God. When the teacher who tortured us in algebra class died, she became a devoted educator. That brute who beat the tar out of anyone in arm's reach, he dies, and we are shocked to learn that he was in fact a gentle giant who loved the Lord. Did he now? It's hilarious. Dark, but funny. We have both, my mother and I, known enough old people to know that old age, in my mother's words, just makes one more so. Whatever you were at 40, 60 to 80 won't fix. Nobody stops being a jerk, she's told me more than once, just because they slowed down. Only she didn't say jerk. P and V, remember? When she wants to, that dainty little thing curses like a pirate's parrot. Neither of my beloved grandmothers was ever less than a handful when they got old. She took good care of both of them, by the way. Nobody ever called either an angel, even at their funerals, and we really loved those bossy old ladies. Honest. And no, we didn't always say bossy. As for Mum, it is not to say that she cannot still worry a thing to tatters when she is of a mind, or that she can't be suspicious, short-tempered, or sharp. But remember what she said about getting old? What she is and has always tried hardest to be is kind. And at the very least, never intentionally unkind. She loves who she loves, good and bad, and that's not easily undone, try as anyone might. To be happy is what she intends for us all. To be kind, however, very much more to the point. That's what she taught us. Can't control happiness. It comes and it goes. Can always be kind. And I try, mostly, still. She has always been stronger than she looks, in part because she's always been well over 4 feet tall and unusually quiet. When she was younger, she was rather unkindly dubbed, presumably by one of the crazy sisters, Stella the Stone, for her personal stoicism. That hurt her feelings, I know, obviously disproving the premise right there, though she only told me so years later. Nevertheless, when we were kids, it did seem to us that she could and would decide when she would and would not be moved to a reaction, unlike my father, who raged and wept with equal abandon nearly all his life, did not want to ride alone with him in a car after you had misbehaved. That was bad. He was also always the first person to soothe an injury, but there was something distinctly masculine about his public access to emotion. Still true generally, my fellow men. Ponder that. My mother was taught to be a woman of the Eleanor Roosevelt type. If you're going to cry, go to the bathroom, lock the door, and turn on the tap so that no one can hear you. Probably why she seemed the least sentimental of all the adults in my childhood. Always present and practical of necessity, the one to be counted on in any crisis, the one who invariably got the call to help, the one least likely to lose her shit no matter what. She did, of course, lose it, but my father lost his with predictable regularity, as did both of their sainted mothers, especially his, whenever the wind blew the wrong way or the mood came upon. I've inherited some of that temper too, has to be fought. There was also a demonstrably mad group of people in my mother's life at one time, including both her sisters, and sincerity could sound harsh when it had to be put so often to practical effect, when someone had to be committed or made to see a surgeon and so on. I have some experience of this now myself, and it is frankly impossible. No idea how she managed it. She could love you and make you listen. Check yourself in for observation, clean up the mess you'd made, settle what needed putting down. My father it was who obviously felt bad and sympathized. Mum it was who told him, do something or I will. And they did. They were a good team. They took good care. Just as my brother and sister-in-law now take good care of her. Stones, of course, wear away in the stream, and nearly all of my mother's edges have rounded. She can still make you watch your step now and again, but as I said, mostly what we do together now is talk and laugh and pass the time whenever I can find the time to do so. She is still funny, self-deprecating, and occasionally forgetful. Still forgiving always, but only so far. She remembers some grudges better than what she had for lunch or what we last talked about when we last talked. Still bright as a penny, though, and sharp as a tack, all of those. She also stubbornly resists being made harmless. She now suffers fools better than she used to, but she is no more fond of them than she ever was. She is also now shameless when it comes to reminding anyone who needs to hear it that at 91 she doesn't have time to listen to any more nonsense she finds unsupportable, though she is still more tolerant of other people's nonsense than I'm ever likely to be. And she freaking loves that nobody believes she's 91. Nobody, from the look and sound of her. She loves that. She's right. She looks great. She was always cute and always stylish, but new drugs made her lose quite a lot of weight, and now she's slim as a girl again. She wishes my dad had lived to see her so little. She's about as big as a sparrow now. That makes her adorable, as does the cursing, though that's not what I'm on about. What makes me particularly proud of her just now, what sets me bragging that my mom is better than she ever was, has all to do with her picking fights and saying no real loud. Just lately, she's made a renewed commitment to a rather gentler, elderly version of kicking ass and taking names. Seriously, Stella the Stone is now rather her wrestling name. Immovability, her superpower. Will not be budged, this one, because it seems some bad guys decided to do a bad thing and she was not having it. Not going to have that nonsense. Oh, hell. To be honest, she called it bullshit and the lady was not wrong. When I say my mother reads the local newspapers, I mean all of it, every inch. Some corporation puts an itty-bitty notice the size of a stick of gum in there somewhere in the back of the classifieds page. They still have those in small town newspapers, the classifieds, which is why they still have small town newspapers in some small towns. Anyway, this little squib is the only notice of a public meeting. Trust me when I tell you she is reading that. The meeting turns out to be with her township supervisors, soon. Also, turns out the corporation is ramming through a new industrial gravel pit just up the road, a gravel pit that threatens to ruin local property values, wreck the water table, despoil the air with noise and dust and dirt, bring a fleet of noisy road-wrecking trucks up and down the road outside her house, and probably make a couple of greedy bastards richer at the expense of everyone else who lives there. Well, my brother, who reads the paper after her, but just as close, agrees, and the two of them go to that meeting. It is infuriating, as all three supervisors insist that their only responsibility is to remain neutral, which is obviously nonsense again. The representative from the corporation turns his back. on the public and refuses to talk to them, addressing only the supervisors. The supervisors do nothing. Everybody goes home mad. My mother calls both local papers and the nearest news stations trying to get someone interested in this story, but no one writes or says a thing. She even plays the I'm 91 angle. Human interest, see? But this once, it does no good. My mother and brother put up signs in their yards and tell their neighbors to go to the next meeting. There are people actually organizing the resistance to this insanity. The same brave people who've kept out a garbage mountain for years. Next meeting, there are more locals. The company lawyer has bodyguards to keep the rednecks from beating him up in the parking lot. My brother notices that those old boys are packing heat, and they get put out or have to turn in their guns, I forget which, but that was a good moment. One of the neighbors has hired his own lawyer now, too. And then another meeting. And some of the local merchants have finally heard about this ugly business, and they show up and kick. Now the place is pretty full. Lots of folks get up and raise polite Midwestern hell. Nobody fights the lawyer or beats up his bodyguards. Everybody but the lawyer finds those boys hilarious. The tide would seem to have turned. Finally, after hours, my mother decides to speak. This is not something she has ever done. Public speaking. Not her at all, but she does it. They tell her she needs to walk down front, but she tells them straight up she's 91 years old and she's been sitting there too long and that is not going to happen. And they can just bring her a microphone and she will talk right where she is. People smile and laugh. Now, by the time I hear this story, she can't remember a damn thing she said. A week or so later, we piece it together from my brother and other sources, plus now it's over, she remembers it better. She told those officials and the rest that she was a nice town girl when her new husband moved her out here into the middle of nowhere. Just the one corner store then, one gas pump, and fields. 65 years she's lived there, and she has watched a whole community grow there. Families, and new businesses, and good neighbors. And now they were going to throw all of that away so some greedy men could come in and ruin the land and spoil the air. It was not, it is not right. And she told them in her quiet way, no. And then this happened. If you can't read it, it says, company withdraws, quarry project is dead. The corporation quit. They insisted in the paper there was nothing to do with the locals, but the bastards quit, no gravel pit. The good guys won. I'm not saying she did this. Collective action, resistance, and functioning democracy did this. But even my elderly, adorable little mother knew it doesn't happen unless you show up. And she showed up. That's what I'm talking about. She always shows up. So long as there is breath in her, she will show up. That's the lesson. And that's my best gift this year. I'm pretty sure everybody's scheming to get me some new overalls that fit better than the ones that I bought myself, and that's fine. I will still be surprised. But honestly, my mother's gift to me, I happily now share with you. Now, she used to make fudge this time of year and give it to everybody. She made excellent fudge. She'd send me some in a tin the size of a small suitcase. And I'd even share some of it, too, because she never understood portion control or discrete servings. And now she's given me another example I will try to follow and will try to persuade you all to follow, too. Show up. Resist the bullies. Save what is good. Find your voice and raise it when you have to. Make our democracy work. Be kind. Her name, by the way, is still Mrs. Gerald Kraft. And I call her Mum, of course. And you can call her Stella or Mrs. Kraft when you meet her, and she'll be glad of the company. Or you can find her on the Spacebook and tell her you're proud of her too, if you're so moved. Feel free to remark that she can't possibly be 91 and look that good. That won't do a bit of harm because it's true. And you can say Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah or Happy Holidays as you choose, because I'm pleased to say she's not one of those assholes either. As she'd be the first to tell you, and in just those words. And then we can all have a giggle, because it really is awfully cute when she curses. What there is of her now, it is all good. Thank you so much. Now you have to eat everything on that table before you leave, or she'll be disappointed.